For 5 years, the setting sun meant panic. It meant rushing to turn on the harsh shed lights, frantically calculating lost hours and stressing over tomorrow's harvest. Tu Na stood on the quiet wooden porch, her calloused hands instinctively searching for a notebook to hold or an order to pack. Her fingers curled into empty air. The dirt yard was completely beautifully silent. The massive production shed was locked and dark, and for the first time in her life, the silence didn't terrify her. It just left her completely paralyzed. Welcome back to the channel. The evening air in the yard is thick with the sweet, earthy smell of damp soil and resting green leaves. For half a decade, our minds have been wired for pure survival. When you spend every waking hour running away from financial ruin, your body forgets how to stop. Tu Na remains on the edge of the seasoned wooden porch. She looks down. Just beside the wooden doorframe sit little Henry's small dirt-stained plastic sandals, their tiny blue straps covered in the dry dust of the farm. They are a quiet, daily reminder of exactly why we fought so hard to secure this piece of land. The harvest is finally done. The local workers have been paid their wages in full. The newly built storage shed stands quiet in the twilight, and the farm is stable. Yet, as the orange sun dips below the dark bamboo gate, Tu Na's shoulders remain tight. Her thumb absently rubs the rough, dry calluses on her palm. There are no crates to carry. There is no machinery breaking down in the distance. The external danger is gone, but the instinct to fight remains trapped inside her chest. The yard slowly transitions into a deep indigo, and the only sound is the hum of cicadas waking in the nearby trees. She listens to the wind rustling through the banana leaves, a sound she usually drowned out with the roar of the water pump. Tonight, it is just the wind. We have conquered the soil, but stepping out of that deep, heavy survival mode is proving to be the hardest work we have ever faced. Inside the low-lit kitchen, the day's heat is finally beginning to break. On the old clay stove, the glowing red embers of a dying wood fire gently heat a small, soot-stained aluminum pot. Inside, a simple bowl of rice porridge sits covered for Henry, its mild aroma drifting through the slatted window. Alex steps out of the dark kitchen doorway, his large frame blocking the warm yellow light for a brief second. In his hands, he carries no clipboards, no shipping invoices, and no muddy tools. Instead, he holds a simple, dark ceramic teapot and 2 small, mismatched cups. He crosses the porch with deliberate slowness. His faded shirt is damp with sweat at the collar, bearing the invisible marks of another 12-hour day, but his steps lack their usual hurried urgency. He approaches the heavy, weathered wooden bench where Tu Na stands and lowers himself down. When he sits, the seasoned wood lets out a familiar groan, echoing the profound fatigue settling into his bones. Alex leans forward, resting his thick forearms on his knees, and lets out a long, slow, rattling breath. It is the kind of deep exhale a man unknowingly holds for years. A sigh that carries the weight of clearing wild brush, digging irrigation trenches in the pouring rain, and lying awake staring at the ceiling, silently calculating debts. He carefully pours the hot tea. The dark amber liquid spirals into the cups, sending thin wisps of steam curling up into the cool night air before fading into the shadows of the porch roof. He hands a warm cup to Tu Na, his rough fingers brushing against hers. They do not speak. They simply look out over the dark outline of the garden. We have spent thousands of long, grueling evenings out here, frantically building our livelihood from the dirt up. We have measured our worth by how much we could carry, fix, or endure before collapsing into bed. But as they sit side by side in the gathering dusk, sipping the bitter, fragrant tea, a strange new pressure begins to build in the air between them. It is not the pressure of debt or failing crops. It is the overwhelming, unfamiliar weight of having absolutely nothing left to fix. This is the very first evening they are actually allowing themselves to live the life they built, and the utter stillness feels almost unbearably heavy. The yard is enveloped in the deep, quiet rhythm of the evening. For the past 5 years, this specific hour, just after the sun fully disappeared, was never a time for sitting. It was the frantic transition period. Tu Na would normally be sweeping the dirt away from the packing station, her back aching as she sorted the last of the B-grade produce for the morning market. Alex would be under the harsh glare of a single bulb, his hands black with grease as he rushed to repair a sputtering water pump before the next day's irrigation cycle. Tonight, the only movement is the slow, spiraling rise of steam from their ceramic cups. The physical absence of work feels incredibly heavy. Tu Na shifts uncomfortably on the wooden bench. Her eyes instinctively dart toward the dark, closed door of the supply room. Then the silence is violently broken. On the raw, uneven surface of the wooden table between them, a battered work smartphone suddenly vibrates. The low, aggressive buzzing sound rattles against the wood, demanding immediate attention. In an instant, the fragile piece shatters. An old, deeply ingrained reflex makes Tu Na flinch. Her shoulders snap tight, her posture instantly going rigid. Without even thinking, her hand automatically shoots out across the table. Her mind is already racing through a dozen potential emergencies. A delayed transport truck, a sudden cancellation, a supplier demanding a different invoice. She is ready, as she always is, to absorb the stress and solve the crisis. But before her fingers can grasp the cold metal of the device, another hand moves. Alex reaches across the small gap, his rough, weathered palm thick with the permanent calluses of gripping shovels and carrying heavy wooden crates, gently but firmly covers her hand. He doesn't say a single word. He just stops her forward momentum. The harsh, bright blue light of the incoming call illuminates their tired faces for a brief, startling second. Alex slowly slides his thumb across her knuckles, offering a silent, grounding touch. He looks down at the flashing screen, smiles softly, and with a deliberate, unhurried motion, he turns the phone face down against the dark wood. The glaring blue light is instantly smothered, though the phone continues to buzz softly, blindly into the table. The buzzing eventually stops, leaving an even heavier silence in its wake. Tu Na slowly pulls her hand back, resting it softly in her lap. She stares down at her own empty palms. For half a decade, her entire sense of worth has been tied to motion, to fixing, organizing, and moving forward. Doing absolutely nothing feels like a severe betrayal of the survival instinct that kept them afloat. We face the ultimate test of successful, hard-working people, allowing ourselves to rest without a sudden, suffocating wave of guilt. She finally lifts her head and meets Alex's eyes. He picks up the dark clay teapot and pours a little more warm tea into her cup. His gaze is steady. He purposefully refuses to look over his shoulder at the closed office door behind them, where the ledgers and tomorrow's planning sheets sit waiting in the dark. This is the quiet confrontation. There is no shouting, no dramatic argument about working too much. The conflict is entirely internal. It is the terrifying realization that we have been running at a sprint for so long, we no longer know how to simply look at each other without a farm problem to solve between us. Alex takes a slow sip of his bitter tea, leaning back against the rough siding of the wooden house. The practical truth of our life here is slowly shifting. Building a strong farm was a matter of extreme physical endurance, but protecting the family inside that farm requires a completely different kind of strength. It requires the immense, conscious discipline to let the phone ring out. It requires the active choice to draw a hard line in the dirt and say that the workday is officially over. Tu Na lets out a shaky breath she didn't realize she was holding. She wraps both hands around the warm ceramic cup, letting the residual heat seep into her tired joints. The shadows of the bamboo fence stretch long and dark across the porch floor, completely undisturbed. They choose to sit in the quiet. They choose to look at the darkening garden instead of the balance sheet. They are finally, painfully forcing themselves to accept that the farm is strong enough to survive the night without them worrying about it every single second. Alex lowers his warm cup, his tired eyes slowly tracing the sturdy, low-cost wooden pillars of our home that faithfully hold up the porch roof. He gestures vaguely toward the massive, quiet storage shed and the dark rows of stable crops resting silently in the distance. Tu Na watches his hand, her calloused thumb slowly tracing the rough, uneven grain of the wooden table. They shift on the bench, the physical distance between them naturally closing as the mental distance from their exhausting work widens. They sit closer together now, their shoulders touching, forming a quiet, united front against their own relentless ambition. This silent porch is where we face the sobering realization of what the last 5 years actually cost us. We so often trick ourselves into believing that endless work automatically equals permanent security. But what is the practical reality? A massive, newly expanded shed and a booming, profitable harvest are completely worthless if they end up costing you the peace of mind required to actually enjoy them. The ultimate unspoken goal of every late-night shift, every blistered hand, and every drop of sweat shed into this soil was never to build a massive agricultural empire. It was simply to buy back our time. It was to earn the fundamental human right to sit on this exact porch, drink a cheap cup of bitter tea, and watch the sun go down without the terrifying shadow of poverty looming over us. The true hidden harvest isn't the crates of produce stacked in the dark. It is the absolute freedom to finally stop moving. Suddenly, the heavy, thoughtful quiet of the evening breaks. Little Henry bursts out from behind the kitchen screen door, his bright, innocent laughter echoing warmly against the dark bamboo fences. He is happily chasing a stray evening moth, his small feet pattering wildly across the safe dirt yard. For years, this exact moment would have triggered an instant panic. Tu Na would have immediately jumped up from the bench, frantically warning him to be careful of the heavy tractor tires or the sharp, unused farm tools stacked haphazardly in the corner. But tonight she stays firmly seated. She just watches her son play in the fading light. A warm, genuine smile, the kind that reaches deep into her tired eyes, finally breaks across her face. She gently leans her head against Alex's solid shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest. There are no dramatic declarations about finding perfect peace, and no sudden proclamations that all their worries are forever cured. She doesn't say anything profound at all. She simply closes her eyes, listens to the soft wind rustling the broad banana leaves, and finally completely exhales. The transformation is quiet, but absolute. They have finally learned that the absolute hardest part of building a beautiful life is giving yourself the permission to actually live inside it. The deeper truth of all our endless labor is that true wealth is never found in a ledger. It is found in a quiet mind and a safe yard where a child can freely run. The sun will certainly rise tomorrow, and there will inevitably be new seeds to plant and new problems to solve in the dirt. But tonight, the dirt can wait. The camera slowly pulls back into the garden shadows. The tea stops steaming in the cool air. The heavy ledgers remain firmly closed. The simple wooden house simply breathes in the deep indigo twilight, quietly holding its family safe inside. Join the conversation. We read every single comment, and your shared wisdom helps our entire community grow. Stay with us. If you found a little peace on our porch tonight, please subscribe to the channel so we can continue building this beautiful life together.